The Immortal Army came for war, but the human showed them his weapon. Best HFY stories. The Immortal Army had marched for centuries, their footsteps silent on the wind-swept plains of countless worlds. They were a force of nature, a living storm made of untold power and rage, unstoppable by time or fear. No empire, no civilization had ever resisted them. They were warriors of ancient magic, invulnerable to the passage of years, and their sole purpose was war. Yet, when they arrived on Earth, something unexpected happened. The humans had not surrendered. They had not begged for mercy. They had not even tried to run. Instead, one man stood at the front of the crumbling city walls, staring at the vast, endless sea of immortal soldiers. The human, known as Commander Liam Hawke, was not a giant of myth or legend, nor was he a wizard capable of magic. He was just a soldier, a man forged in the fires of war. The Immortal Army halted, their hundreds of thousands of eyes locked on him, scanning his form as though searching for some hidden power or trick. And then, in eerie unison, their leader, the general of the Immortal Army, spoke. Human. The general's voice boomed, its timbre deep and unnerving. You stand alone, unarmed, before us. You know that your world is at an end. Surrender, and we will grant you a swift death. Resist, and we shall bring untold suffering. Liam's eyes never wavered. His body was tired, his wounds from the previous days of fighting still fresh. But his mind was sharp. A fierce smile crept onto his face, one that could only be described as dangerous. You misunderstand, Liam said, his voice steady, betraying no sign of fear. You are the ones who are unarmed. A ripple of confusion spread through the ranks of the Immortal Army. They had seen weapons before, spells that could obliterate entire landscapes, blades forged from the stars themselves, and shields impervious to all forces. Yet, Liam stood with nothing but his hands. The general raised an eyebrow, sensing something was amiss. You claim to have a weapon, human, but where is it? Liam stepped forward, his boots crunching against the shattered remnants of the city streets. He didn't need to say anything. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, seemingly insignificant object. It was an old, weathered book, bound in leather, the pages yellowed with age. Here, Liam said, holding the book up high for the Immortal Army to see. This is my weapon. The Immortal Army began to murmur amongst themselves, their unease growing. What kind of weapon could a mere book be? The general frowned. You think a book will save you? Liam opened the book, his fingers running along the pages, tracing the words as he read them aloud. In the beginning, there was only one, and from this one, all things came to be. The words echoed into the silence, and the world seemed to shudder. The general's eyes narrowed, sensing a disturbance in the very fabric of reality itself. What is this trickery? Liam ignored him, continuing to read the words on the page. With each phrase, something in the air grew heavier. The winds began to stir. The ground beneath them trembled. The Immortal Army grew restless, and their whispers turned into frantic questions. The general stepped forward, his hand raised to strike. But then, silence. Liam's eyes burned with an intensity that none of the immortals could ignore. You see, he said, his voice becoming a low growl. I don't need magic. I don't need immortality. All I need is this, our story. As he read, the book began to glow with a strange, otherworldly light. The words on the pages swirled and twisted, rewriting themselves as though alive. The ground cracked open beneath the Immortal Army, and from the depths of the earth, the legends of humanity rose. First, there was the thunder of ancient battles. The Immortal Army found themselves surrounded by towering images of great warriors, men and women who had fought against impossible odds and won. Against all reason, there were faces of generals who had led armies to victory against invincible foes, of soldiers who had stared death in the eye and walked away unscathed. Then, the skies darkened, and lightning crackled in the distance. The heavens themselves seemed to take notice. From the pages of the book, stories began to bleed into reality. The stories of human endurance, of overcoming the impossible. There were no spells or weapons, only the resilience of spirit. The first immortal soldier fell, his body crumbling to dust as the weight of human history pressed down upon him. The others looked on in horror, their immortality no match for the power of a species' will to survive. You are not the first to come for us, Liam continued, his voice rising above the chaos, and you won't be the last. But you will remember us. We don't need your gods or your eternal power. All we need is the strength to keep fighting, no matter how many times we fall. This is our weapon." And with that, the world exploded into light. The Immortal Army, for all their power, could not withstand the relentless force of humanity's legacy. They were not defeated by magic, nor by technology. They were overwhelmed by something far greater, the unyielding will of a species that had survived wars, plagues, and the very ravages of time itself. As the last of the immortals fell, Liam Hawke stood alone, the book still glowing in his hands. The silence was deafening. "The Immortal Army," he muttered under his breath, "came for war, but they forgot one thing." He closed the book and looked up at the horizon, where the sun was rising over a world that was, once again, safe. Humans never stop fighting. The Immortal Army came for war, but the human showed them his weapon, Part 2. In the aftermath of the battle, the dust settled over the land, and the last remnants of the Immortal Army lay scattered across the plains. The horizon was still aglow with the light of the human spirit, a light that had burned brighter than the invincible power of the immortals. But this was only the beginning. Commander Liam Hawke, though victorious, felt the weight of the battle's toll. His body was battered, his armor cracked, and the old book he had wielded, the weapon, was now heavy in his hands. It was an ancient relic, passed down through generations of humanity, its pages imbued with the very essence of human history, perseverance, and resilience. As Liam made his way through the battlefield, he could feel the gaze of the few remaining survivors, humans who had witnessed the impossible. They gathered around him, awestruck and silent. But as the quiet reverence lingered, a familiar rumble echoed in the distance. It started low, like a storm gathering strength, and soon it was unmistakable. Another force, another army, was approaching. Liam turned to face the horizon, his eyes narrowed. "Not again," he muttered. The ground shook as a new, even larger force emerged from the mist. This time, it wasn't the Immortal Army. These soldiers were different, smaller, more nimble, but no less formidable. Their armor shimmered with an eerie, metallic sheen, and their faces were covered by dark visors, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "Who are they?" a young soldier beside Liam whispered, fear creeping into his voice. "They are the Syndics," Liam answered, his tone grim, "a faction of conquerors from beyond the stars. They've been watching us for a long time, but they've never intervened, until now." The Syndics were not immortal, but they were technologically superior. Their weapons and machines far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. They had studied humanity's past wars, watching as civilizations fell and rose again. Now, they came not with magic or immortality, but with something equally terrifying, advanced science and weaponry that could decimate entire planets. "I should have known," Liam murmured to himself. The Immortal Army wasn't the only one watching. The Syndics halted. Their leader, a towering figure in gleaming armor, stepped forward. His voice rang out, cold and calculated. "Human," the Syndic leader addressed Liam, "your world is impressive, but we are here for one purpose, to bring you into the fold of the Syndic Empire. Surrender now, and your species will be spared. Resist, and you will face extinction, just as the Immortals did." Liam stepped forward, his hand tightening around the book. This time, the book wasn't glowing. Its power had been exhausted in the first battle, but the human spirit was far from spent. "You know," Liam said, his voice calm, "I've heard this speech before." The Syndic leader raised an eyebrow. "You've heard this speech? You think you can win again?" Liam smiled. "No, I don't think so, but I don't need to." Without another word, he turned and began walking back toward the remnants of the city. The Syndics looked at one another, puzzled. Had the human given up? Suddenly, Liam turned, raising his voice so that it echoed across the battlefield. "You want to know the secret to human strength?" he shouted. The Syndics froze. The words of the Immortal Army's general rang in their minds. "What is this trickery?" Liam raised his hand, and from his pockets, he pulled out several small devices, data drives, weapons, and old records. "This," he said, "is what makes us different. This is our weapon." The Syndic leader laughed, though his laughter lacked confidence. "What are these? Toys? You still think your technology can stand against ours?" But as the Syndic leader spoke, something strange began to happen. The devices Liam held began to hum with an energy unlike anything the Syndics had seen. Their machines, once so powerful, began to glitch. The very energy of the Syndic army faltered. One by one, their advanced tech faltered, and the Syndic soldiers looked at their equipment in confusion. The Syndic leader's expression turned from arrogance to uncertainty. Liam stood still, his eyes cold. You see, what you don't understand is this: we're always evolving, we always learn, and when we fight, we don't just fight with machines or magic. We fight with everything we've ever experienced, every lesson from our past, every battle we've ever won or lost. That is our weapon. The Syndic leader's confidence began to crack. What have you done? He demanded. Liam didn't respond. Instead, the world around them shifted. The very air seemed to bend, and the ground beneath their feet hummed with power. The Syndics watched as humanity's history unfolded around them. Soldiers from every era, every war, every struggle, stood tall in formation. The Syndics were surrounded by the spirits of human resilience, the ghosts of every fight, every victory, and every sacrifice. This is our weapon, Liam repeated. Not just our technology, not just our history, but the fact that we will never stop fighting, we will never stop evolving, and no matter how many times we fall, we always rise again. The Syndic leader took a step back, realizing he was no longer facing an army, he was facing humanity itself. And in that moment, he understood. The Syndics retreated. They had come to conquer, to subjugate, but they left knowing that they could never truly defeat the human will. No army, no weapon, no technology could ever overpower what humanity carried within them. As the Syndic forces disappeared into the distance, Liam turned to his fellow humans. Remember this, he said. Every time they come for us, every time they think they can break us, we show them what we're made of, and we always win. The world was still scarred by war, but the human spirit was unbroken. It was stronger than any weapon, stronger than any army. And as long as humanity stood together, it always would be. The Immortal army came for war, but the human showed them his weapon. Part 3. The battle against the Syndics was only the beginning of a new, darker chapter for humanity. Though they had repelled the invaders with what could only be described as a miracle of human will, the price was heavy. Cities had been ravaged, and lives lost. Yet, in the aftermath, something strange had begun to stir beneath the surface of the human race. The victory over the Syndics had left an indelible mark, not just in the history books, but in the hearts of those who had witnessed it. Commander Liam Hawke stood at the head of the human alliance, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The skies were clearer now, but the lingering sense of unease had not dissipated. Something larger was coming, something more terrifying than anything they had faced before. As he walked through the makeshift command center, his mind raced. The Syndics, though retreating, would undoubtedly regroup. They would not forget the power that humanity had unleashed. But worse still, a new enemy was approaching, one even older than the Immortal army, and whose existence had been hinted at in ancient texts scattered across the globe. The Elders. The Elders were a race of ancient, cosmic beings who had watched the universe since the dawn of time. They were the keepers of knowledge, creators of civilizations, and destroyers of those that failed to meet their expectations. Few had encountered them and survived, but those who had lived to tell the tale spoke of creatures so advanced, so powerful, that not even the Syndics dared to provoke them. And now, they were coming for Earth. Liam's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps. He turned to see General Cara Dune, his most trusted officer, approaching. Her face was stern, but there was an undeniable fire in her eyes. "Liam, we need to talk," she said, her voice low but urgent. "We've just intercepted a message from the Syndic fleet. They're not retreating. They've called in reinforcements from the Elders." Liam's heart sank. "The Elders?" he asked, almost to himself. "Yes," Cara confirmed. "And this isn't just any force. The Elders are sending their vanguard, an army like nothing we've ever seen. I've heard stories from old texts, ancient records that our historians unearthed. These beings, they don't negotiate, they eradicate." Liam clenched his fists. For the first time in a long while, doubt crept into his mind. The Syndics had been formidable, but this was something else entirely. He had known that one day, humanity would face the consequences of their defiance. The Immortal Army. The Syndics, those were just the first steps in a much larger cosmic struggle. "How much time do we have?" Liam asked, his voice steady but strained. 2 weeks, Kara replied. "They're already in transit, and once they arrive, Earth will be nothing but a footnote in the galaxy's history." Liam took a deep breath, trying to quell the rising storm of fear inside him. He had fought battles all his life, but the thought of an enemy so vast, so beyond their comprehension, was overwhelming. But there was one thing he knew beyond a shadow of a doubt: humanity had already defied the odds, and now, they were being called to do it again. "We need to act fast," Liam said, turning to the map of Earth displayed on the wall. "We're not going to beat them with technology or force. We're going to beat them with what we've always had." Kara raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Our story," Liam replied, his eyes hardening with resolve. "We're going to show them that humanity is more than just a blip in the galaxy. We're going to remind them that the greatest weapon we have is our will to survive. We don't bow to anyone. We never have, and we never will." Kara nodded, her lips curling into a smile. "Then it's time we make them remember." The next 2 weeks were unlike anything humanity had experienced. A global rallying cry swept across the world as humans from every corner of the Earth united under one banner. The message was simple but powerful: we do not surrender. Humanity's best minds, scientists, engineers, historians, and philosophers, worked together to create weapons unlike anything the Elders had ever encountered. The ancient texts that spoke of the Elders and their capabilities were studied in depth, and their weaknesses, however small, were uncovered. But even with this knowledge, Liam knew that Earth's true strength lay elsewhere. It was in the hearts of every human who had fought, bled, and sacrificed for their world. They weren't just going to fight with weapons. They were going to fight with their legacy. A plan was put into motion. Humanity would not simply face the Elders head-on. They would use their stories, their cultures, and their collective spirit to challenge the invaders. The idea was as bold as it was dangerous. If humanity had shown anything, it was that they could shape the future through the lessons of the past. In secret, the book that had served as their first weapon was brought into the heart of the Alliance's new headquarters. The ancient text, now a symbol of the human struggle, was reinterpreted. The pages, infused with the energy of humanity's greatest triumphs, were rewritten. Every victory, every defeat, every moment of defiance infused into them, adding to the power they held. Liam stood in front of a small group of generals and strategists, the book in his hands once again. "This is not just a history," he said, looking around at their faces. "It's a message to the Elders, a message they will not ignore." As the day of reckoning neared, the human forces gathered, ready for what would likely be their final stand. The Syndics had already pulled back, fearing the coming of the Elders. They had no interest in a fight they could not win. But humanity stood united. The skies darkened as the first vanguard of the Elders arrived, their ships unlike anything humanity had ever seen, vast and incomprehensible. The very fabric of space seemed to warp around them, and their immense power radiated out like a wave, crashing against the Earth's defenses. Liam stood at the front of the command center, his eyes locked onto the massive fleet hovering above them. Kara stood beside him, her gaze as fierce as his. "They're here," she said quietly. Liam took a deep breath, gripping the book tightly. "Let them come." The battle began not with weapons, not with destruction, but with words. Humanity's leaders, through a combination of advanced technology and ancient sorcery, projected the collective history of humanity into the stars, broadcasting it across the cosmos. The tale of Earth's rise from nothing, of the great wars they had fought and won, of the people who had stood against impossible odds, rang out across the universe. The Elders, for the first time in their eternal existence, felt a twinge of uncertainty. They had never encountered a species that fought so fiercely, not with technology, not with magic, but with the power of their own story. And in that moment, humanity's weapon became clear. Their strength wasn't in their machines or their magic. It was in their legacy, their will to never back down. As the vanguard of the Elders faltered, the second wave arrived. But humanity was ready. The war was not yet won, but one thing was certain: if the Elders were to succeed, they would have to break the spirit of every single human alive. And that, as humanity had already proven, was not something the Elders were prepared for. Humanity would fight, And in doing so, they would show the galaxy what it meant to be human. The immortal army came for war, but the human showed them his weapon. Part 4. The elders, ancient beyond comprehension, had underestimated humanity. They had come to Earth with their unimaginable power, prepared to crush a young, insignificant species beneath their heel, but they had never encountered the human will, the same force that had driven humans to survive every war, every plague, and every natural disaster now confronted them, unseen, unyielding, and determined. As the first wave of the Elders' vanguard descended upon Earth, their immense ships casting shadows over entire continents, the human forces made their final preparations. Every city, every corner of the planet, had mobilized. The ancient book that had served as humanity's symbol of resilience was now the centerpiece of their plan. It was no longer just a record of history. It was a weapon that carried the essence of humanity's greatest triumphs, its most brutal defeats, and everything in between. Liam Hawke stood at the heart of the human command center once more, staring up at the projections of the elder ships hanging ominously in the sky. His hand rested on the worn cover of the book, his mind sharpened to a single point. Beside him, General Cara Dune was preparing the final pieces of their strategy. 2 days, Cara said, her voice calm despite the tension in the room. 2 days until the Elders' full force arrives. They'll wipe us off the map if we don't act now. Liam nodded, his expression resolute. They won't. We've already won. Cara blinked, then frowned. How can you say that? They're coming with everything. They've got the firepower to turn this planet to ash. We're not fighting with firepower, Cara. We're fighting with who we are. Liam's gaze drifted to the book again. We're going to show them that the Elders made a mistake coming here. They didn't just underestimate our technology or our military strength. They underestimated our spirit. Cara's lips curled into a fierce grin. Then let's make sure they never forget us. The human plan was simple, but its execution was nothing short of a masterpiece. Across the world, soldiers, engineers, and scientists had worked tirelessly to prepare. Massive generators were set up across Earth's major cities, linked to the power of humanity's greatest achievements, its stories, its art, its culture. The human spirit was encoded into data streams, memories of every human life ever lived, every sacrifice, every moment of triumph. The Elders, meanwhile, remained unaware. Their massive ships loomed like gods in the sky, untouched by human weapons. Their vanguard had made quick work of any resistance, sending waves of energy that flattened entire cities in seconds. But they had yet to fully engage, waiting for their reinforcements to arrive. Then, the unexpected happened. In every city on Earth, the human generators hummed to life. The energy of humanity's collective history, its stories of struggle and survival, began to flow through the planet, creating a resonance unlike anything the universe had ever known. The air itself seemed to bend under the weight of the memories humanity had stored and lived. On the battlefield, soldiers felt it first. Their hearts beat faster, their muscles filled with energy. The stories of heroes long past flooded their minds, legends of warriors who had stood against the impossible and prevailed. A soldier on the front lines, clutching his rifle, suddenly remembered the spirit of those who had fought and died to build this world. His pulse surged, and the weight of the rifle seemed lighter in his hands. The resolve in his eyes burned brighter. But it wasn't just the soldiers. The civilians, too, felt it. The teachers, the farmers, the children. Every person alive on Earth began to feel the power of humanity's collective will to survive. Liam Hawke stood at the center of the command center, watching the projections of the Elder fleet grow closer. Now, he muttered, show them. The next moment, Earth's skies exploded with light. The human generators blasted the resonance across the planet, not with the destructive force of weaponry, but with the force of collective spirit. The Elders' ships, which had been immune to the destructive weapons of human technology, now found themselves under an assault they could not fathom. The resonance vibrated through the very fabric of reality, reaching into the hearts and minds of the Elder vanguard. The impact was immediate. The energy from the human collective will was overwhelming. The first wave of Elder ships, their massive hulls humming with ancient energy, began to tremble as if under the weight of the past itself. A rumble echoed through space. The Elders had never encountered this before, an entire species whose existence was an expression of defiance. They had seen the power of civilizations, They had seen empires rise and fall, but never had they seen a species whose very being was a weapon of its own making. We cannot defeat this," one elder whispered in their ancient tongue, staring in disbelief as their ships began to malfunction. "This is not the force of weapons. This is something else." Liam watched as the projection of Earth's sky turned into a vast storm of humanity's willpower. The resonance of 1,000 battles, 1,000,000 lives, and billions of hearts, all pushing back against the invaders. The ancient elders, who had eradicated countless species before, were now confronted with the unbreakable force of human unity. "Retreat," the elder leader ordered, his voice shaking with an unfamiliar fear. This is not our fight." But the battle had only just begun. As the elders faltered, their ships quaking under the resonance, a new wave of humanity's strength rose from the ashes. It wasn't just their spirit that repelled the elders, it was their intelligence. Humans, in their desperation, had repurposed every lesson learned from centuries of conflict, creating new weapons and tactics that defied the elders' expectations. Human engineers had crafted advanced drones, now swarming around the elder ships, drawing power from the collective resonance and disrupting the elder ships' delicate systems. Human fighter jets, piloted by the bravest souls, dove into battle with unrelenting ferocity, weaving through the massive ships like wasps stinging the titans that loomed above. Even the simplest of human-made objects, tools, mechanical devices, became extensions of their power, transformed into symbols of defiance. The elders, for the first time in their long existence, found themselves on the defensive, not because their technology was inferior, but because humanity was no longer just a species. It had become a force, an unstoppable wave of resistance powered by every individual that had ever lived. As Earth's forces rose up, the skies became filled with a symphony of human resilience, and all across the battlefield, from the front lines to the heart of the cities, humans watched as their stories came alive, no longer just words in books, but forces that could shatter galaxies. For the first time, the elders realized that humanity was not a species to be conquered. They were a species destined to fight forever, and without end. And that was a force even the elders couldn't overcome. The battle raged on. But humanity had proven something irrefutable. They had shown the elders the ultimate truth. No matter how vast the universe, no matter how mighty the forces that sought to crush them, humanity could never be defeated, not by magic, not by technology, and certainly not by invincible armies. Because the greatest weapon humanity had was not forged in the stars, nor bound by time. It was something far more potent, the will to survive, the drive to rise from every defeat, and the unwavering strength of human spirit. And as long as that spirit burned bright, no enemy, no matter how powerful, could ever hope to extinguish it. The immortal army came for war, but the human showed them his weapon. Part 5. The elders had retreated, but they were not gone. Their immense fleet had vanished into the stars, and for the first time in centuries, they were faced with something they had never anticipated: failure. They were the oldest of their kind, the keepers of the universe's deepest knowledge, and they had watched the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Yet, humanity had proved them wrong. The elders had underestimated the power of a species bound not by its technology, nor by its science, but by its spirit. The collective will of humanity had become a force beyond their understanding, something that resonated through the very fabric of the cosmos. As the elders regrouped, something darker began to stir, a realization that their place at the top of the galactic hierarchy might be challenged. The universe had changed. And it wasn't just Earth that had noticed. Across the stars, whispers of the human spirit began to spread. Those who had once seen humanity as weak, insignificant, or doomed to extinction were now watching with wide eyes. But humanity was not resting on its laurels. The victory over the syndics and the elders had come at great cost, but it had also forged a new path. No longer would they hide. No longer would they wait to be conquered. The victory had ignited something inside every human heart, an unwavering resolve to not just survive, but to thrive. Liam Hawke stood in the command center, staring at the star maps spread before him. Earth had been rebuilt, slowly but surely. The cities that had been reduced to rubble were now rising from the ashes, as human ingenuity and determination once again took the lead. But even as they rebuilt, Liam knew that the peace they had won was fragile. It would not last long. Cara Dunn entered the room, her face etched with both exhaustion and resolve. The Syndics are regrouping. They've sent scouts. But we've intercepted messages. They're preparing to launch another offensive. This time, they're not coming alone. Liam's fingers drummed lightly on the map. And the elders? They're still out there. Somewhere. We know they've started pulling back. But they've left us with a warning. This is not over. Liam sighed, his gaze hardening. They may be gone for now, but they'll be back. And next time, they won't be so easily stopped. This galaxy is full of predators, and humanity is still too small to fight them all. But we've beaten them twice now, Cara said, her voice firm. We didn't just survive. We won. We've shown the universe what we're capable of. We can do it again. Liam turned to her, his expression serious. And we will. But this time, we have to be ready. We can't rely on our old ways of fighting. We've learned a lot. But there's still so much more we need to understand. If we're going to survive, we need to evolve. Across the galaxy, a new alliance was forming. Human diplomats and military leaders had begun forging alliances with alien species, some of whom had been watching the humans closely, intrigued by their spirit and resilience. The Syndics had already begun to move, preparing for their third assault. But this time, humanity was not going to face them alone. One of the first to offer an alliance was a species known as the Solarum, a technologically advanced race. The Solarum had been one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy, but their own history was filled with tragedy. They had witnessed the fall of their empire, and though they had rebuilt, they had not yet found a species they truly trusted. Until they met humanity. In a secretive meeting aboard a Solarum warship, the human delegation stood face to face with the Solarum leaders. The room was filled with tension, and the silent weight of history hung between them. The Solarum spoke first, their voices echoing in the chamber. We have watched you. We have seen what you have done. You are the only species to stand up to the Syndics and the Elders in such a way. The only species that has not fallen to despair in the face of overwhelming odds. You have proven that your will is strong. Stronger than any technology or empire we have ever known. Liam stood tall, meeting their gaze. And we're not stopping. If you join us, we can defeat them together. We can make sure the Syndics never threaten our worlds again. The Solarum leader paused, contemplating the offer. What do you want from us, human? Liam's eyes narrowed. Everything you have. We need your technology, your resources, and most importantly, your knowledge. The Syndics are just the beginning. There are worse threats out there, and if we're going to survive, we need to learn everything we can. The Solarum leaders exchanged a glance. They had faced enemies far worse than the Syndics, and they knew that this was no ordinary battle. It was not just a war for survival. It was a fight for the future of the galaxy. We will stand with you, the leader finally said. Together, we can face the coming storm. With the Solarum on their side, humanity's defenses grew stronger, but even with new allies, the weight of the coming battle pressed heavily on their shoulders. Earth had become a beacon of resistance. And every alien species that had long stayed in the shadows began to take notice. Some came to offer aid, while others, fearing the rise of humanity, began to prepare for their own survival. But the real threat still loomed in the dark reaches of space, the Elders. Liam stood once again at the helm of the human forces, staring out at the stars. He could feel the weight of every decision, every sacrifice, but he also felt something else, a fire in his chest. Humanity had risen against impossible odds twice already. They had faced the Immortal army, the Syndics, and the Elders, and they had survived. But now, it was time for humanity to take the fight to them. Prepare for war, Liam said, his voice steady. This time, we're not just defending. This time, we're going on the offensive. The human fleet, now reinforced by allies, launched into the stars with a single goal in mind. To hunt down the Syndics and the Elders, and to show the galaxy that humanity was not a species to be conquered, but one to be reckoned with. Across the galaxy, the stories of human resistance spread like wildfire, from the depths of the Solarum homeworlds to the farthest reaches of Syndic territory. The legend of humanity's spirit grew. The final battle was coming, and this time, humanity was no longer fighting to survive, they were fighting to win. The Immortal army, the Syndics, and the Elders all had one thing in common. They believed they were invincible. They believed that no force in the universe could stand against them. They were wrong. For the first time, the galaxy would witness the true power of humanity, a power not born of technology, not born of magic, but born of the human spirit. And the universe would never be the same again.